I can find no record that any of these monarchs, once they were installed in England, took much notice of Scotland at all.
Mm.
And yet, I would have liked to see a little more, considering the king's grandmother was the daughter of Scottish nobility. There wasn't a lot of reference to.
Look, one of the things I did want to speak to you about yesterday, because you and I had a wee chat about this yesterday, just before I came on air, was while we thought it went very well. I mean, I have skin in the game, being Scottish. It was very
Yes.
much an English ceremony, wasn't it?
Well, I had the same thought, and that's what we talked about. And it was interesting because, eh, the union of the crowns was in 1603, as you well know, when James VI of
I
Scotland
remember it well,
the
Nick.
first. Yes, well, I was there at the time, and a young lad, and I thought to myself, there is very little Scottish sort of colour in the coronation, and yet Scotland is the other kingdom in this partnership. And I just had a quick look back through out of interest. Won't take a lot of time over this. Only three kings of Britain, if you want to put it that way, have ever been crowned in Scotland, and one was James VI of Scotland, who was crowned before he was crowned in England, obviously, because he was a Scottish king who succeeded Elizabeth I. Charles I had no intention of being, although he was born in Scotland, had no intention of being crowned in Scotland. He was crowned in Westminster, succeeded to the throne, and then the Scottish Parliament got into his case and leaned on him to travel north to be crowned in Scotland. Now, that was 8 years after he'd been crowned in England. So he had to be persuaded back. A great quote going back to James I and VI, on his way down to England to actually take the throne and be crowned, he said to one of the people with him, having gone into England, which was richer in those days than Scotland, he said, "I feel I've moved from a stony couch to a feather bed."
Oh, wow.
And he promised to go back to Scotland every 3 years and never did.
Oh,
And then, of course, Charles II was crowned in Scotland first because it was the middle of the civil wars. He was in exile. The Scots crowned him, and then he had to wait another 10 years to be crowned in England when he was restored. But I can find no record that any of these monarchs, once they were installed in England, took much notice of Scotland at all.
mm.
And yet, I would have liked to see a little more, considering the king's grandmother was the daughter of Scottish nobility. There wasn't a lot of reference, and apart from the fact that a couple of the verses were in Gaelic.
Yeah,
There was nothing
and also the
really.
fact that Scotland was is such an important part of the late Queen's life and death, in
Mm.
terms of all that. So yeah, I was a wee bit disappointed about that as well.
And I have to say that over the weeks leading up to it, I was thinking, I'm not sure if they've got this right. If they dumb it down too much, they take away a lot of that pageantry that those thousands of people went to see. We had new music, 12 pieces composed, one by Andrew Lloyd Webber. And I thought, how does that going to fit in with Zadok the priest and Elgar and all the other things that were part of a traditional coronation? And do you know what? When I was commentating on it and watching it, I'm thinking, hey, this fits. There's nothing that sort of jarred with me to say that shouldn't have been in.
Mm,
I mean, I was a little bit iffy about that oath, and I think a lot of people were, and
yeah.
and they did change it a little bit. But I didn't see any joins in the seams. I mean, we were halfway through Andrew Lloyd Webber's anthem before I realised that that was his piece.
Mm.
And to me, it worked. Other people may not agree, but I thought it was well done and it worked.
I think it really is. I mean, I think the sort of standout thing that a lot of people have said as well, apart from Penny Mordaunt, who was an absolute legend at the
Oh, a
event
star.
yesterday, absolute a star is born, and a new exercise class is born in terms of Penny Mordaunt's sword. Basically, that is a whole new. She should trademark that and get a whole sort of franchise going. But the music was absolutely stunning, and it's one of those examples where music can be so powerful in a setting. And I imagine being actually inside the abbey, for those that were lucky enough to be there, was absolutely kind of spine tingling to hear that music. But